Thank you for joining us today. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, co-founder of the Just-in-Time Cafe. I'm also an instructor for the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt and Leadership courses at UC San Diego Extension. And I am honored and excited to be your moderator for today's Process Palooza. Woohoo! Today, we are going to be exploring process improvement in higher education with a featured interview, a Pecha Kucha, which we're going to explain later, and a great LSS race spotlight, Lean Six Sigma race spotlight. So please feel free to use the Q&A window to submit questions at any time to our panelists and our presenters. This session is going to be recorded and placed on the Process Palooza website there you go, there it is in the chat window. Thank you, Megan. This webinar has live closed captioning. You can click on the closed caption button. Thank you again right there. And you can select show subtitles. Instructions are now posted in the chat window. Thank you, Megan. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first featured interview focusing on integrating lean thinking and culture at universities. I want to introduce our speaker, Bill Balzer. Dr. Balzer is the author of Lean Higher Education, Increasing the Value and Performance of University Processes. He is a professor of industrial organizational psychology at Bowling Green University, where he also holds an appointment as Vice President, Faculty Affairs and Strategic Initiatives. And not that he doesn't have enough on his plate already, he is currently serving as the interim president of Owens Community College. Bill is going to be chatting with our own Aaron Crickard, and Aaron from UC San Diego Office of the Executive Vice Chancellor will be moderating this discussion. I'm going to hand it over to you, Aaron.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So welcome to Process Palooza, Bill. We're so excited to have you with us.
Great to be here, Aaron.
Thanks. So I think you wanted to start off with a thought experiment. So we're going to post a poll, and I'll read the question once. The question is, what would you think of the quality of a hospital where 60% of the time your family members had to extend their inpatient care due to a secondary infection? And Bill, the answers are A, this is a great hospital, I'd recommend it to others. B, this is not a good hospital, I'd use it as a last resort if there were no other options. Or C, something's really wrong, I would recommend avoiding this hospital. So Bill, let's talk about this. What about this question?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is this thought question is think about the performance of this organization. So I'd like to ask all the attendees if they wouldn't mind answering this, and we'll come back to it a little bit later on in the session.
Wonderful. So Bill, let's get started. So lean tools have been around for years. Why is this an important conversation to have now?
Yeah, it's a great question, Aaron. And I think actually we needed this question asked years ago. In the last decades, it's been one of accountability, accountability to our beneficiaries, accountability to sponsors, eroding funding in higher education. But I think there's some increasing concerns about the value and performance of higher education today. And I would I'm calling it the 4 C's. The first C is commoditization, where everything is really becoming the same. So introductory psychology is introductory psychology is introductory psychology. Whether someone takes it as a high school student, college credit while they're in high school, or whether they take it at a community college and transfer to a university, or take it at any university, it's really not distinguishable from other courses, intro psych courses. Same might be said about an RN to BSN, registered nurse to Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. Same might be said of an executive MBA program. They're becoming commodities. And when things are commodities, they're interchangeable. So how do we distinguish among them? The second C, I would say, is cost sensitivity. There is increasing cost sensitivity in higher education. There was just an article this week saying that the levels of tuition discounting are the highest that they've ever been in the United States right now. Now, I know we can probably attribute some of that to COVID, but it's this creep of as the cost of higher education goes up, discounting goes up as well. The third C, competition. we have a lot of competitors out there. I don't know if anybody's here from Western Governors University, but they now have one price for a fixed time period, take as many courses as you want. A very different model for higher education. Or we have businesses and organizations doing industry certificates, competing with us, doing what they want just in time for their employees and maybe cutting higher education out. And then right now, Amazon University is doing non-credit courses. But when Amazon turns its site on credit courses, much like they've turned their site on everything else, we have to be really careful or very attentive. And the fourth C, I would put COVID-19 as the general disruptor that's accelerated all of these issues. Now everybody's faculty has now learned how to do online courses. So they'll do online courses. Maybe they'll keep them online, maybe they'll do online programs. But it's this great disruptor. So the 4 C's, commoditization, cost sensitivity, competition, and COVID are all there, meaning that we need to do something different right now. So if it's possible to put up the poll results now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, so we've got the first, this is a great hospital and recommended to others, 3%. This is not a good hospital, 23%. And something's really wrong, I would recommend avoiding this hospital, 74%.
Okay, so I'd be really interested in the one who said it's a great hospital, just because maybe there's a perspective there that would be helpful to all of us, and maybe that person could put it in the chat if they feel comfortable doing that. But if you really think about this extended stay, hospital stay, that I would say is equivalent to the general state of higher education today. If we were to look in the integrated post-secondary education data system, for those who know it as IPEDS, it's the national data system for higher education. And if we were to look at one key metric for higher education, and that's the graduation rate, we'd maybe be surprised to see that there's a 40 to 60% error rate in higher education. And what do I mean by that? I mean that those data, which if we look at students who started in the fall of 2011 and followed them through, fewer than 4 in 10 students graduate in 4 years. 6 out of 10 graduate in 6 years. So that means there's a 50% increase in their educational cost and that lost opportunity for 2 years of income or wages. 4 out of 10 graduated after 6 years or maybe never graduated. So they might have significant debt without a degree. So, fewer than 4 graduating in 4 years, 4 out of 10 graduating in 4 years, that's the equivalent of a 60% error rate if we're trying to get students out in 4 years. Why is it taking 4 years? We know from our process perspective, it's not the people, it's the process, which tells me there's just certainly opportunities in higher education where we can improve the performance of a process. And I might even take the example a little bit further and say, how would you feel if you took your car to the auto repair shop and every time you did that, it was late 50% of the time, it took 50% longer than you planned, and sometimes your car wasn't fixed, but you still had to pay. That's the model. If we were looking at that hospital and maybe looking at that auto repair shop, we wouldn't think very positively of it. That's the image that many outsiders have of higher education. So we need to find ways to address it. I think lean higher education is a great way to do it. It's a problem-solving framework. It increases the value and performance of processes. It's grounded in continuous improvement and respect for people. And we know it's demonstrated approach that works. It's good for the beneficiaries, the people we serve, good for employees, and it's certainly good for the institution.
So this is a great transition for the next question I have for you, Bill. Why lean or Lean Six Sigma as a methodology? I mean, it's a continuous improvement methodology, but there are others. Why do these approaches work best for higher education?
Right. So I'll start by saying, I know they'll work in higher education. We know they work in higher education. There's a long history of lean being successful, over 50 years, clearly in manufacturing. But an interesting part of a paper some colleagues at BGSU and I did back in 2019 in the Industrial and Organizational Psychology Journal, we looked at the higher level sectors inside the North American Industries Classification System. This is how you carve up every business and organization. You put it into one of these 20 sectors or buckets. It might be agriculture, mining, construction, finance, retail, arts and entertainment, healthcare, and education. Every one of them is doing work in the area of lean. Lean, as we know, and the research, and you can read it in my book, you can read it in Steve Yorkstone's edited book, there's many examples of how lean works in higher education out there. Why I think it's a good fit for higher education is the two pillars of lean really fit well within the higher education space. The pillar of continuous improvement, we talked about that. I mean, we are learning organizations by design. Isn't that what higher education is all about, being a learning organization? We use problem-solving processes. That's what our faculty are trained to do, whether it's a qualitative process or a quantitative process. It's all about problem solving. The challenge that we have is that higher education is not very well-intentioned, although I should say is well-intentioned, but it doesn't really have a good standardized approach and tools for doing that. For example, not everybody knows how to use a visual map to look at an entire process. That's what we need to give. So it really fits, this continuous improvement model fits within higher education as a learning organization. Similarly, the second pillar, respect for people, I mean, everything we depend on is the talent, is the raw energy of higher education. Our creation and dissemination of knowledge requires us to attract, retain, and develop that talent. It's our greatest resource. Lean higher education really respects that talent. It focuses on making sure we're delivering value to them where they want it, when they want it, how they want it. So meeting their expectations, whether it's our faculty, whether it's our staff, whether it's our students, maybe whether it's our donors or advocates. Lean will do this. It provides this comprehensive system for change improvement. It balances the needs, not just what the institution wants, but what's good for the employees, and most importantly, what's good for the beneficiaries, our students primarily. It's a very practical framework. It has tools to use, and very simple tools to use, and it favors implementing solutions quickly, which is somewhat anomalous with the way most higher education institutions work. So it's a sort of let's get it done. So I think it's a very nice fit, and that's why I think it could be used more extensively in higher education.
I like that concept of the agility and being able to respond, Bill. When you talk about COVID as a disruptor, I think about not only those in higher education who's shifted over to virtual education, but I think of our future students who are currently in high school and even middle school, and they all shifted over to virtual education. So can you speak a little bit more about how, because COVID was such a disruptor, I think it's going to be more challenging to predict the trends of the delivery of education as we move forward. So this framework that, again, just like you're saying, listens to the customer is going to be really important.
Yeah, Aaron, I agree entirely with you. And again, most universities and colleges around the world did something differently under COVID. There was a shift of some sort. I think if we went back and really sort of did a debrief or a post-mortem on those shifts, we would see that some universities and colleges shifted pretty well. Others maybe not so well. The process for saying we've got to change the way we deliver higher education, how do we do that? And I don't think everyone went right into, well, let's do a PDCA cycle, a plan, do, check, act cycle, or a DMAIC cycle to get that done. They knew they had to change. Maybe they didn't bring the right people to the table. Maybe they didn't have a good way to brainstorm and figure out those solutions. Maybe they didn't look at the entire process before they started making changes. Maybe they didn't think about the continuous improvement, get it done, doesn't have to be perfect, get it done, and let's continuously improve over time. I mean, so the higher education could have certainly benefited from lean in having a more consistent, in-place process for solving every problem that comes your way, rather than the Wild West problem-solving approaches we find in higher education more typically.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Last week, we spoke about how UC San Diego, we just kind of adopted the theme of failing faster, where we came up with a solution and we're like, let's see if this works. and then check. So speaking of getting started, if I were in the audience and I were from a university and I thought this sounds great, I might have the question for Bill that would say, how do I get started? So how does a university get started? And have you seen it done different ways? Have you seen universities start this in different ways?
Yeah, so I mean, just get started. Just whatever you do, get started would be my recommendation. And I think, you know, there are some people who say there's really one way to do this, and it's the title of the book, The Toyota Way. You know, the way that Toyota rolled out Lean. But you know, when you think about it, Toyota didn't start with that model back in the 1940s and 1950s. It was an evolving model that evolved to fit Toyota's culture and the direction, the strategy or strategic direction Toyota wanted to go. So I would say that continuous improvement suggests that it's not a fixed model. There are many ways to do it. And chapter 3 in the second edition of my book, the one that I think was, if you go to the Lean Higher Education website, you can get a link to it. But chapter 3 has exemplars from 16 universities around the world. And I think the nice thing about looking at those exemplars, what I got out of that when writing the book, is that the notion of equifinality. There are many, many ways to the same outcome. So you can see in those 16 examples, some got started because they were responding to a crisis, a financial crisis most typically. Some went to Lean because it was their strategy. They wanted to improve themselves. Michigan Technological University, as another example, had a board member who knew about Lean from another organization and said, hey, I think this could work here. So there are many ways to get started from that perspective. You can do it with strong executive support, top down from the chancellor or the president, or it might just be one person that is really trying to get a pilot program started to demonstrate it to other people. So the University of Waterloo, which is covered in chapter 3, they identified some high-paying projects to showcase what Lean Higher Education could do for them. Some do it with external consultants. Some just hire in Lean Higher Education consultants. Some will grow their own with more distributed expertise. So there's lots of models there as well. Some do it within one division because that's all the support you have, or some do it cross-divisionally, you know, throughout the organization. Although while most might call themselves university-wide, I would argue that they're really not deep into academic processes per se. So maybe not in academic affairs, but certainly everywhere else. Many models for rapid improvement events, we see that. And the initial design that many of these universities and colleges started with evolved over time as well. So the short answer is there's really no one right way to do it. A good place to start, though, is maybe checking the readiness of your institution for Lean. And that might be like looking at key things like culture and climate. It might be leadership, and it might be some other institutional practices like reward and motivation systems. I mean, if you have a reward system that doesn't reward people for trying things that don't work, that fail, then, as you said earlier, Erin, fail fast wouldn't be a good fit in that organization. So you'd either have to change that or maybe figure out how to squeeze it in. So doing like an assessment of where your organization is right now would give you a good sense of whether you're ready for it. And then what's the most appropriate opportunity? Should you really punt and wait? This is now not the right time for Lean. Do it some of those pilot projects, or go for the gold and do it university-wide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you're setting up the framework of thinking about this in terms of culture and readiness. So in your book, you talk about lean interventions and the importance of involving stakeholders in the delivery of quality in every step of the way. So we have examples on our campus where stakeholders were involved and the change management is really easy. It flows very well. And then at times where stakeholders weren't involved in processes and the change management's much more difficult. So can you talk a little bit about how this contributes to change management and culture?
So again, as mentioned, my background is industrial organizational psychology. So this is what we do when we're not doing Lean. And I think we have, I'll call it the chicken egg problem in organizational change. Do you need to change the culture first to change, perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors in the organization? Or is it really the other way around? Do we start by changing perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors, which then influences culture? And I sort of lean towards that. I really think it's a two-way street. But I think if you start changing the perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors of the employees, of members, stakeholders, you can start to make the right kind of culture for higher education. So helping them see that, like beneficiaries, by showing them that their needs are what's most important to us, that we're going to continuously try to meet and exceed those needs out of respect for them as our beneficiaries. Now, think about how a student as a beneficiary would see those types of behaviors, maybe by participating in an RIE, or maybe by participating in a focus group or some other lean tool, when, instead of where they're told what their needs are by the faculty member, they have to wait till office hours to ask questions. It's 15 weeks of uneven, heavy, and light readings and assignments. They get feedback maybe twice a semester, well after their performance is completed. Think about the message that lean interventions would be sending to those students. Same things with employees. If we start telling them that their experience, their knowledge are what's respected, we're investing in them because they're the future of the institution, that the things we do are going to be non-zero-sum gains. It's going to be good for our students, it's going to be good for the employees, and it's going to be good for the university. If it's not good for the employees, we don't do it. So how is that sending a different message to employees, where it's not like they sit there, they're the ones who pick up the phone calls or answer the emails about the lack of agency or authority they have to improve a process, or to prove something. They know exactly what the problem is, they know how to fix it, but they're never asked. Instead, someone comes in and does it for them. Someone who's maybe never done their job before, who just wants to get it done quickly. Same thing, we can do the same for supervisors. They spend so much of their time putting out fires. What if we put them into this organization where really they have time to sit back and think, because they've developed their employees to really be the brains of the organization, and they help develop them. They're coaches and mentors, not problem solvers, frontline problem solvers themselves. So I think by moving all these lean kinds of behaviors and activities, we can start to change their perceptions, their attitudes, and then their behaviors. And that starts to get that flywheel turning, that lean flywheel, and you're going to move towards a lean university.
Absolutely. I love the message of employee empowerment and really trusting our subject matter experts as experts in whatever the operational procedures, policies, and processes are. But I'm going to pivot now to the one question that I get asked the most, and someone posted in the live Q&A. How do you get administration to embrace adaptation of the lean model and continuous improvement? And Bill, you're at 2 institutions right now. Tell us what speaks to you as an administrator.
So I think, I'm glad for the question. So thank you for asking it. And it's funny, at the first edition of my book, which, of course, when you write a book, you think it's the greatest thing in the world. I started showing it to a bunch of senior leaders, and they weren't as excited as I was. And what I realized is that I was talking lean language, lean higher education language, and I wasn't really talking their language. So really, it led me to step back and say, how do we speak to administration? So in the second edition, I added a whole chapter on this. What can senior leaders expect from lean higher education? And equally important, what do we expect of them for lean higher education as well? So we need to talk their language, and not all of them are going to have the same expectations. So I think we have to, first of all, figure out what are the metrics that matter to them, and that's how we're going to build our elevator speeches for those senior leaders. And I really like the work of Lawrence and Cairns in 2017, where they created what's called the benefit realization spreadsheet, where you identify what metrics are important to people, how you're going to measure them, what's the time frame, and so forth. Is it time saved? Is it dollars saved? Is it improved satisfaction? And identifying those metrics will help us speak to those senior leaders So if I start talking about taking steps out of a process and making a process 40% shorter, I'll just say a CFO might have said to me, yeah, but that hasn't saved me any money. Where does that drop to the bottom line? So I was talking one thing, this person might have been wanting another thing. So talking their language is going to be really important. If money is what talks, it works. And I would point out in the book, Miami University of Ohio, from 2011 to 2019, they did over 1,500 lean projects. They reduced their costs by $27.5 million. They avoided over $42 million in costs, and they raised over $1.3 million in new revenue. And these are very conservative numbers for Miami, because they only count the cost in the first year that it's gained. So if they saved $1 million by improving a process in the first year, it only added $1 million in this total amount. So it's a very conservative number. Our colleagues at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland, 4,000 improvement projects. They freed up 27,000 hours of staff time annually. Think about what you can do with redeploying that, what value that could add to all other parts of a university to make it better. And if, as people retire or resign or move along, then you have some opportunities to say, do we need fewer people? But until people pull themselves out, you don't do lean projects to get rid of people. But when people leave by their own volition, maybe that's opportunities to save on personnel costs.
So that is a perfect segue into a question that just was posted in the live Q&A. After the success of pilot projects, how do you handle it when administration then want to cut FTE based on the new process flow? And I'm going to add a story in here. My black belt years ago, we did a linked black and green belt projects in succession on a very large process that was class scheduling. We schedule over 20,000 classes a year here at UC San Diego. And what we did with the savings of time, we worked into the project to repurpose that time so that it was part of the project and it wouldn't come up. So that was part of our project plan. But Bill, what do you have to say about that when administration then want to cut FTE when they see the savings of hours?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, because a lot of people see lean as a cost-saving management philosophy or strategy. And I would argue, no, it is all about adding value. It's adding value, reducing waste, improving flow. And there are lots of things that follow from that are really good for the organization. One of them is going to be cost saving. But think about it. You know, we're all learning organisms. A group of employees who are close to the process work really hard in a trusting environment, in a trusting culture, and figure out a way to reduce the work from 5 people to 4 people. And then a week later, there's only 4 of them there. How many of those employees are really going to think hard about the next process improvement activity for that part of the organization? So I would really counsel strong and hard those senior leaders to say, this is what's going to happen. You're going to really cripple the lean process. It is not going to work the way you want it to work. Here are some other strategies for getting there, helping them understand the redeployment until other positions become available, or just finding some ways to redeploy those people would be the better strategy. But whenever someone says, can you help me think about doing lean in my organization? That's really one of the primary questions I would ask up front, Aaron, is make sure they're doing it for the right reasons. There are lots of other cost-saving techniques, but if it's not lean, getting rid of people who've actually improved the process for you, for the university, firing them, it is not lean. It's mean.
So Bill, let me ask you almost the converse of this, because we've used it in areas where we see high turnover that's caused us to pause and say, what's going on? And then as we're process mapping the processes that these positions are in charge of, have to do for their jobs, we're saying, no wonder there's such high turnover. This is impossible. We have made it impossible for people to do their jobs. And so we're trying to increase retention and reduce turnover with the process improvement. That's just another way we've used it. Have you ever seen examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples in the human resource area in particular about how do you recruit, how do you hire, how do you onboard, and so how do you build those processes to make them lean? That, you know, again, think about that new employee coming into the organization. Are we really thinking about them or onboarding them, or are we really just sort of going through, let's check the box, let's make sure you do your paperwork? So I applaud you by redoing those processes to make it meet the needs of the onboarded employee is what's going to make them feel valued, respected, and make them feel part of this lean organization. Now, if you're not paying them well, Aaron, in San Diego, that may be another problem, but it shouldn't be a process problem. You can identify that in you know, in a 5Y or whatever, a digging deep into a process, a fishbone diagram or so forth. But yeah, you want to figure out what it is that's leading to that high turnover.
Well, and you know, in higher education, sometimes processes just build up over time. So there's a lack of awareness at a central level or an administrative leadership level as to how built upon the processes have become, overly complex.
Yes.
There's a great question here for you, Bill, in the live Q&A. Can you speak about how to create a trusting environment from a manager's point of view? And I would tag on to that from maybe an administration point of view.
Yeah, that's almost like another workshop. But I think, the point is very important, is that how do you build that culture of trust? And you know, again, there are some tools out there already well-developed, measures of trust in supervision, trust in senior leadership. And I would say, you know, you want to do your organizational analysis and figure out where you are. Then depending on maybe which dimensions of trust you're low on, you might start saying, okay, what are the right kinds of interventions? I mean, is it about communication? Is it trust about saying one thing and doing another? So really, again, to your earlier point, getting to the root cause of what is leading to that lack of trust. And then what kinds of interventions might you do that are very targeted on an area of trust? But I think you first want to get an assessment of where you are.
Yeah.
And I do want to go back to just one last point to the comment you made earlier. You know, things accumulate like barnacles on a ship on a process. And that's why what's so critical to lean is learning to see. It's really seeing that entire process. And when you can see it from the perspective, the full process from all perspectives, you know, what a student is seeing or what a parent is seeing, not just what your little shop is seeing in that process. When you see the whole thing, sometimes it's a little embarrassing that you didn't really know all that, but it is so empowering to say, why are we doing that step? We're doing this step 3 times and we only need to do it once. How do we get rid of these steps? How do we get rid of these approvals? So learning to see is such a fundamental concept.
I love that. I love that. We say learning to listen too, but same thing. There's another great question. The chat is just lit up. I'm so excited. This is, how do you convince top management to do lean in higher education in a very bureaucratic university with strong academic oligarchy? And that's the kind of culture that we're talking about. I mean, that's kind of higher education historically, right, Bill?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, higher education is intentionally designed to resist change. I mean, for thousands of years, we've thought popes and governments and so forth to keep from someone taking over knowledge creation and knowledge dissemination. So we've designed it, not bulletproof, but we really designed it that way. So I think what if your assessment is that it's going to be very resistant to change, then that's where you do those little projects. Krista Schulte at the University of Michigan is a great example. Their shared services area, they're not really trying to push it out to the entire university, but they've got this great cell, this great lean cell right in their university. And people can wander in. They can see lean and daily work anytime they want and say, oh my gosh, look what this is like. Look how much time they're saving. Look how much money they're saving. Look how much better service they're providing. maybe I can do that in my area. Maybe I could do that on my job, lean in daily work. It doesn't have to be a university doing it. You can 5S your computer to make things better. So I think by doing those pilot projects or cells, demonstration cells, are good ways to get it started. Bring those leaders over to University of Michigan, bring them up to Michigan Technological University, bring them down to Miami U, fly them over to Western Europe, and there's great places over there to visit all around the world. You can see it in action, and that might help defrost some of these senior leaders.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. So we're coming to a close here. So I have one, just a small question for you. What's on the horizon for lean in higher education? If you could just tell us what to expect, that'd be great.
Well, yeah. So for me, what's on the horizon, I'd ask you another very quick experiment. Think about your years in college, everybody. Who were the most influential, most important professors that you had that changed your life, changed your direction? Most people, when asked that question, they usually come up with 3 or 4 faculty members. That's what Bob Emiliani, a great sort of leader in lean, calls the 10% problem. Provocatively, the 10% problem. If only 4 of 40 professors that you might have had for a 4-year bachelor's degree, 120 credit hours, 3 credit, if only 4 of those are sticking out, there's lots of opportunity that we can move lean into the academic side of this, into how we improve courses, into how we improve academic programs or degrees, and how we do university level academic processes. So I think there's so much opportunity there, turning the 10% problem into a 90% value proposition.
Wonderful. Bill, this has been incredible. I know that our audience has really been enjoying this. We have so many Q&As here, questions and answers. So thank you so much for joining us for Process Palooza. We hope to see you in person at some point. But we're also hoping to have you join us for our UC San Diego Business Excellence Community of Practice, or BCOP, Summer Book Club as we read your book.
Oh, wonderful. I'll be there.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And now I'll hand it back to Tracy.
Well, thank you, Erin and Bill. I really enjoyed listening to your discussion. It was very exciting to hear your insights and perspective about lean in higher education and the impact it can have. I'm sure you've inspired lots of people today, and I can't wait to see what happens in higher education. So thank you very much. So UC San Diego is blazing a trail for lean in higher education. Process Palooza is a creation as a result of that. And we're going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the Process Palooza's great Lean Six Sigma race. And so to help us with that, our next guest is Anna Portlock. She's a senior analyst in UC San Diego's Business and Financial Services and the current chair of the Business Excellence Community of Practice at UC San Diego, also known as BCOP. So Anna was a past competitor in the Great Lean Six Sigma race, and we've invited her here to talk about being a competitor and give us the inside scoop about this high energy process improvement competition. At that time, she participated in the competition. At the time that she participated, she was a brand new black belt. So welcome, Anna.
Hi, Tracy. It's good to see you.
So
I'm actually,
yes.
Yeah, you too. It's a pleasure to be here with you in particular. My Lean Six Sigma journey started way back when I took your Green Belt course, and your energy and your excitement is really what got me started on this journey. So this is really, really cool to be here with you.
Thank you so much. No, I was just going to say the same thing. I remember you coming, you were like one of the first people in my first Greenbelt class at UC San Diego, and look at you now. You're doing all kinds of stuff with process improvement. Yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what was it like, participating in the first the Lean Six Sigma Great Race. What was it like to be a competitor in that whole environment?
So I'm asked this question a lot. I have people who contact me and that are curious and maybe a little bit hesitant to join the competition. When I stepped up to do it, I have to say I was really nervous. I didn't know what to expect. It was held in the Price Center ballroom. So when I walked into that ballroom, I don't know if you can imagine or you remember this, those who are listening in, if you can imagine, there was a lot going on. There was so much excitement in the room. There were cameras rolling. Tracy, you were walking around with a microphone in your hand and interviewing people. I think these type of interviews were going on at the same time as the competition. So there was a lot going on in the room. And I remember coming to the table where my group was sitting down to meet and thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Because I thought, wow, we're going to have to improve a process, a real business process in 5 hours. How are we going to do this? And honestly, I had a lot of self-doubt at the time. I didn't know, I joined the competition really to challenge myself, to put forth the skill set that I had just acquired through the Black Belt program. And so I was really excited to do it. And I was feeling like I needed to step up. And this was something that was easy. It wasn't in my workplace. It was outside of that, and I felt like it gave me the opportunity to connect with other people. And so it was exciting energy. It was exciting and also nerve-wracking. And everyone around the table felt the same way. So if anyone's considering joining the competition and they're hesitant, believe me, everyone that joins feels that same way. We got together and we did some quick intros and we started to tackle the process that was given to us. And I have to say, it was really, really hard to focus. There was a lot, like I said, a lot of energy, a lot going on. It was really loud. And so in a live environment like that, where you're trying to connect with people and then to focus on a process that you are unfamiliar with was very difficult. So, and all of us were kind of coming together in that same way. Like we all felt the same way. We were all feeling that nervous energy and trying to absorb all of this information, and knowing that we had this like we were on a schedule, right? We had 5 hours and that time started ticking away very quickly. All that to say that we got through it. We kept having to remind ourselves to follow the steps, go back to the DMAIC approach, follow the steps, follow the process, because right out of the gate, we all wanted to come up with a solution. And so a lot of times in your business environment, that's what people want to do. I know the problem, let me give you the solution. And I think that the great thing about Lean Six Sigma is that you have this process that you go through that where you uncover a lot of those, I want to say that they are lessons along the way, but blind spots too. So you're not really, these things are not visible to you if you jump to a solution right out of the gate. And so we kept having to remind each other, let's stick to the point. Let's go through the steps. Let's come up with the solution at the end.
Well, yes. I mean, I think what's really interesting about the Process Palooza competition is you're going into it, you don't know who your teammates are, you don't know the process you're going to improve. And really, the only thing you have in common at that moment is the common language that you've built in hopes that other people have had training of some kind.
Right. That's all we had. And believe me, people want to go off track, right? You quickly jump to forget what you learned. Let's just come up with the solution because we're going to have to present something in a few hours. And I think that translates to the real world, to your workplace, because you have a lot of distractions, right? There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of, there are a lot of influences. There are a lot of people, and I heard in the presentation that we just sat through, it is true that people don't want to admit that there are things that aren't perfect in their process, right? I have to say that I thought that one of the greatest parts of this was that these are people within the university that stepped up to say, look at my process.
Yes.
It's not perfect. And so that to me was meaningful as part of the competition. Yeah.
So what was the impact that you ended up having with the Process Palooza team? How did it affect you with that experience? So tell us about that.
in so many ways. I have to say the most impactful thing from that happened to me, the most impactful part of the experience was a year after the competition. Aside from bonding with the people that were part of the competition, right? That happens, you become friends, we had lunch together, all this great stuff happened within that team. Outside of that, a year after the competition, I was in a, I don't remember what conference it was, or I sat through this presentation that the business owner was giving. It was the assistant director of fleet services. And so the project or the process that we worked on was his process. And so he was presenting on the benefit of the competition and went through all of the things that they had implemented. And it was everything that we had come up with, all of the they implemented everything.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and the savings was upwards of $1 million. The process went from 30 days down to, I believe it was 3 days. I mean, it's amazing. And I sat there and I felt so proud because this was our work. I mean, these were the recommendations that we gave in just 5 hours. And so that was a moment where I felt like really proud of the team and of myself for stepping up and stepping out of my comfort zone and really, walking through the process and feeling challenged and feeling nervous. And that was okay. The benefit to what we did far outweighs any of that, right? It was 5 hours of my time.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
yeah, he's still talking about it.
Yeah, that you find out a year later that they actually implemented everything that you had suggested, and they had incredible millions of dollars of savings, huge impact, 30 to 3 days. And you're like, I helped.
Yeah. Not only that, but part of the process touched my business unit, my department. So we had buyers who were part of the process, and we made a recommendation to change things around that had a positive impact on the buyers that were in my department. So
yes.
that was also a benefit to all of this. Yeah.
Yes. And now you started out as a green belt, then you got your black belt. Now you're involved with B Cop. You're the chair of B Cop. And we'd love to hear a little bit about that and some of the things that you're doing now, because it sounds to me like you're a zealot, process improvement zealot. So tell us what's happening now.
You got to choose your path, right? There's so much you can do with the training. What I got out of the competition was confidence, right? I had a lot of confidence coming out of this. So I stepped up and applied for the lean bench. So I joined that group as well. And that led to becoming the chair for B Cop. B Cop is a community practice. It is on UCSD campus. It brings together local communities of practice that include organizational change management, project management, and then process improvement, which is based on Lean Six Sigma. Yes. And so we have our board meetings once a month where we talk about events that we're hosting on campus, and we host monthly events. We have newsletters that go out. Membership is open to campus. And so if you are a UCSD employee and wanting to join and get involved, it's a great place to start. It's a great place to connect with other people.
Yes.
And to learn best practices from each other. We have members that also speak. And so they'll offer to present on a topic that they.
Cool. Well, Anna, it was so nice to see you again, because I just love your energy too. Thank you so much for your insight as a past competitor and your journey. Really, I love seeing students. I always say, hey, stay connected. I want to see you on the journey. And you're one of those people that has stuck to the journey, and it was so awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. So just a little update on this year's competition. We decided to hold our first ever virtual version of the Great Lean Six Sigma race in conjunction with Process Palooza this year. And there are 2 campus business processes to analyze and improve, 6 teams, 24 competitors, and they hail from 10 different institutions across the US and Canada. So join us on June 1st and June 8th to see the competition pitches for the Process Paloozas on those days. Live announcement of the winners. That was awesome. Thank you, Anna. Okay, so we are now going to have a Pecha Kucha contest with some of our partners from the Lean and Higher Education Consortium of global partner institutions from all over the world who practice Lean at their institutions. So first, what is Pecha Kucha? I know you're dying to know. Pecha Kucha is a presentation format of 20 chosen images, each shown for 20 seconds each. In other words, presenters have 400 seconds to tell the story with visuals to guide the way. Pecha Kucha means chit chat in Japanese, and these creative competitions began in Tokyo in 2003. Since then, 3 million people have attended these worldwide events. So remember, these slides automatically forward without the presenter's intervention. So we're going to have 4 Pecha Kucha presentations from our colleagues who will be talking about Lean around the world. After the 4th presentation, a Zoom poll will pop up on your screen and you can vote for your favorite presentation. Okay, our first presenter, Angus Brown, is head of operational improvement, Imperial College London. He is presenting from London, where it's currently 7 p.m. Thank you for joining us and welcome, Angus Brown.
Good evening, Tracy. Thank you so much. And greetings to everyone from London. I will just wait for my slides to start. So, what do you do when you look around you and you see fires and mutiny everywhere? Your stakeholders are revolting. Your current improvement communities are fatigued, and some people never understand the point of what you're trying to achieve. Give up? No. Fight on, of course, but also try something different. The thing is, I've got a secret, a past life, and something we should do more of. Ask the user. Process improvement is all well and good for support services, but it doesn't always speak to the heart of the university and doesn't always excite our many staff whose primary focus is students. Oh yes, my secret. I got distracted when I said process improvement. My background is frontline library services and user experience in that environment. Capturing the student experience via multiple methods, understanding their requirements, and translating that into service to understand value. A user experience approach offered us an opportunity to engage with new stakeholders who lead student-facing services to promote operational improvement by working on something student-facing teams care about, and also encouraging our community of practice to try new tools. So where was there a chance to do something in this uncharted territory? Our university puts on a number of big student-facing events each year, including Welcome Week for new students. The week comprises talks, networking events, student support promotions, and a massive fair for all our clubs and societies. The week is run by our Director of Student Experience. It's high profile, yet minimally resourced, and it's the first experience most new students will have of interacting with multiple college services, which combine to define their experience of their first weeks at university. Previous evaluation was purely retrospective survey rather than real-time understanding. Welcome Week is a common kickoff at the start of the university year in the UK. Students have to navigate multiple processes, multiple buildings, multiple new relationships, and of course, multiple welcome parties. The university puts a lot of effort in, but does it actually work? Does it join up? I pitched an idea to do a piece of work with using a user experience approach and proposed a design that required direct observation of the events, interactive student consultations, and an attempt to capture the overall student journey. We had to recruit a team of operational improvement practitioners and volunteers, design a suite of tools, provide training, and do all the planning. At the heart of the plan was the application of some specific tools to capture both broad insight and in-depth reflective viewpoints. We used direct observation, the ethnographic version of Gemba, to look at the behaviors in a particular space and its attributes, using an AEIOU framework to help our practitioners capture actions, the environment, interactions, objects, and users. We designed insights boards, affinity maps for the hearts and minds to explore the students and their viewpoints, but also capture the impressions that their visiting families had around their priorities for the first week. And of course, one of our students drew a penis. One of our goals was to design and use journey maps, basically a supercharged process map, to capture the multiple interaction points, exploring how the students feel at key touch points during the week, understand what events worked for them, and how easy college systems were for them to use. If that wasn't enough, we also managed to persuade some students to use a diary study approach to capture reflections over the week. To take up was patchy, but it still created and captured an authentic student voice that we could play back to our end users. A vast amount of data was gathered in a very short time span. It was drawn from events as they occurred and allows us to describe overarching insights into the student experience very quickly and create impact for the welcome effort. And of course, we generated some new ideas too. The work was well received and allowed us to report back to our senior stakeholders in a way we hadn't previously been able to do. The approach was new to many. It didn't step on the toes or territories of battle-weary sponsors, and it was attractive to our community of practitioners and gave them the opportunity to do something different. Was it successful? Yes. We were able to play a new story back to college. It was listened to and valued. Yes, we've seen and supported new improvements. And yes, we were able to generate new interest in a more specific operational improvement remit, and we were asked to do more. We were approached by a potential sponsor to look at the undergraduate open day, to understand how prospective new students visit college, how they interpret our courses, how they visit our academic departments, and find out how they can study with the college. So we broke out our user experience toolkit again and captured the viewpoints of students and their parents, and were able to work to a specific brief to explore both the inclusivity of our offer, but in particular look at how we attracted students from different economic backgrounds. We might have used a smaller range of tools to do this, but we were able to engage over 20 of our practitioners to take part. Again, results have been useful, new conversations have occurred, and we've been able to join up the central administrative and academic departments. If I've done this correctly, we're looking at my last slide. Some battles and fires continue at Imperial, but the role of the operational improvement continues, and we've done a lot to improve the student experience at college.
Thank you, Angus. You are an excellent drawer. I love the drawings and the Post-its. All right, our second Pecha Kucha presenter is Megan Mozina, owner of Cresta Solutions, a higher education training and consulting firm. She is joining us from Chicago, where it is currently almost 1:30 p.m. Thank you for joining us and welcome, Megan Mozina.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm really excited to be here, and Angus gives me some tough shoes to fill. Once upon a time, in a windy city far from San Diego, an exalted senior leader came to me and said, "Megan, I bestow unto you this big, important problem, and it is now your quest to find its solution. I shall give you no staff, no budget, and almost none of my time, but I will leave my half-drunk cup of coffee. After I discarded the burnt dark roast, I felt a little queasy, but it wasn't from the coffee. It was because this was new. Processes, I could improve those. Projects, managed. Changes, led. But solving a raw problem of this magnitude was new. I felt like a knight all geared up with tools for organizational excellence, but with no map to help me find that darn dragon that needed slaying. So what did I do? I dug into my treasure chest and I pulled out a magical map. It was based on 65 years of academic research into creative problem solving. And you know what kind of solutions that map promised if I followed it? Innovative ones. And Mr. Senior Leader's problem needed an innovative solution. This map was brilliant, but it was missing a few components that I needed to successfully carry out my quest. So I layered on lean tools here and change management practices there. And this path became a 5-step project framework that allowed me to start with a problem, apply creativity and best practices, and end with an innovative solution. And it's those innovative solutions that yield breakthrough results for your organization. Looking big picture at this project framework, you clarify the problem, ideate solutions, develop the top solution into a plan, implement the plan, and then optimize over time. Zooming in, the first step is clarify. This is where you pinpoint the true problem by examining the history, background information, and key data. This is where you might do current state mapping, go to the Gemba, or do a root cause analysis. Once your problem is clarified, we go to step 2, which is ideate. And the ideation phase is unique. It's an intentional time to consider many possibilities, get input from many voices, and find the best solution, which is the most innovative solution. Then we move on to develop, where we refine that innovative solution into a set of plans. This is where you can do change readiness assessments, make future state maps and Gantt charts, write standard operating procedures. And then the implementation phase is next. Remember, when you're implementing, you're leading a change, and change is hard. Actively helping people through the change is key, and it truly shows respect for people. The last phase is optimization, and in the spirit of Plan, Do, Check, Act, you evaluate the project and you make it even better. Since that day Mr. Senior Leader charged me with that big important problem, I've tested and refined this framework to almost universal application. I use it for all my projects and I teach it broadly. But why this framework? First of all, it helps me be more productive because I can stack tools from Lean and other areas. And having ideation as a designated phase helps my clients see how the ideation phase isn't just fun, but it's productive. Secondly, this framework supports my credibility because I'm able to objectively show project after project that the final solutions are the best solutions. Why? Because getting ideas from everyone helps the great ones rise to the top. The best part of this framework is that it's inclusive. By having an intentional phase, when you gather and value everyone's ideas, you are by design more inclusive. What furthers the inclusiveness is having a consistent structure and a common language. Sometimes employees fear changes, and rightfully so. But if they help ideate solutions, rather than just having a change imposed upon them, they're more likely to feel respected, and you get a greater diversity of ideas. I also love this framework because its related assessment, called Foresight, helps us understand where we're energized in the creative process. It heightens my emotional intelligence because it helps me understand that while implementation may drain you, even if it energizes me. Knowing others' preferences helps me to slow down and to have a greater appreciation for phases that are less energizing to me. It also gives me the language to respectfully nudge us along when I feel we may have clarified enough. To many people, lean is just about efficiency. But as you know, lean is so much more than that. To be lean, one must be creative. And this framework values and prioritizes creativity as part of the project process. Whether you use PDCA, DMAIC, my Cresta Solutions framework, or something else, my challenge to you is to infuse creativity into your project process to boost productivity, credibility, and inclusion, and to innovatively slay that dragon. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. A lovely story of what to do when you're given no staff, no budget, and none of a leader's time. And you make this look so easy because the slides are automatically moving forward. Thank you so much. All right, our third presenter is Lean Manager at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. He is joining us from Tromsø, where it is currently about 7:30 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome, Svein Ora Chilsnes.
Thank you so much, Tracy. So good to be here. I'll just give you a few sentences in Norwegian. Det er supert å være her, mens vi venter på at min presentasjon starter. Så det blir spennende hva dere har fått med dere til slutt. Online presentations go two ways. So thank you for having me at the Process Palooza, but also welcome to Tromsø, the gateway of the Arctic. I'm a lean manager, facilitator, and design thinker at UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. I have already given you a taste of the Norwegian language, so let's just head on to bærekraftig lean. As you know, a lean journey does not resemble a smooth upward ride towards the top to reach the promised land of flow efficiency. Even so, we have all heard the stories of how to best put our feet forth, one step at a time, in a steady pace on the path to continuous improvement. A lean journey could very well be about finding yourself in a position where you need to put all your skills, charisma, good fortune, and with the help of many others, to balance your way forward through peaks and troughs, trying to avoid havoc and treacherous grounds. So this is our story told with a glimpse in the eye, but nevertheless our current story. It has a beginning, but it has no end. How could it? Lean is a way of thinking, a way of continuous improvement. And stories like that doesn't end. At least this is what we tell ourselves and what we believe in. Our beginning back in 2011 is a classic one, involving a decision maker, a driving force quartet of process guides, and a textbook build-up of more employee enthusiasm than we could handle. As we started our first lean process, we were certainly not balancing on the top of the wave. We were flying high. As we moved further on with more lean work and process improvement, we found the first results to be as good as we dared dream of. We were in the waste sanitation business, smothering waiting times, removing bottlenecks, reducing number of manual steps, decreasing need for transportation, shutting down inventory, and removing the over in production and processing. Building on that initial success, lean thinking caught attention from the university director. In little over a year, lean went from being something one faculty dabbled with to something that was desired as a university-wide implementation of new thinking. The director took the stand and told the entire organization, this is for the long run. In 2014, lean was embedded within the university strategy, at least within the support services. It reads, UiT will ensure the efficiency and quality of its support services through continuous improvement processes with a broad level of involvement. This was another milestone and an important step to acknowledge the long-term engagement needed. But we crashed into the wall of reorganization. With the sounding name Admin 2020, we set out to build more robust admin units, all in the name of efficiency and debureaucratization. This led many people to fearing for their jobs, making it next to impossible to engage people in lean processes. We saw the shadow of lean wear and tear. We drove deeper into the reorganization. During this period, we started looking in the mirror. We felt the need to rediscover ourselves and realized that we cannot change both organization and the way we work at the same time. And to add to this realization, we had demands for more and better services delivered with use of fewer resources. After reorganization, we created this model in 2019, our brand new model for developing our professional services to make them user-centric and holistic. The model is a framework where lean finds its home, supported and even strengthened by the other elements. It becomes bærekraftig, sustainable, able to carry its own weight. What we aim to do is change the way we think in and about our professional services, from our natural, inherited bureaucratic thinking in horizontal lines to the user-centric and holistic vertical line, a shift in focus from ourselves to the core of the university, the academic activities. To do this, we have created a service map for all the administrative services we offer, a process driven large parts of 2020. We started out with 3,307 individual tasks, transformed them into 83 services. Workshop, talks, stands, meetings, user testing, you name it. This January, we started to make them a reality. Looking back, reflecting, contemplating, exercises we go through in order to make sense of what we experience. Maybe we have missed an important element when trying to make improvement stick. Not only the sticky notes that we love, but lean and new thinking itself. In spite of strategies, the long run is hard. What is the foundation of lean? Respect for people. This is what we neglect by not being perceptive. If we force lean, CI, or change too hard on people or the organization, we gradually ruin the foundation that is so important. When taking a new look at our lean thinking, bærekraftig starts to make sense. The thin ice might hold. Through looking back, bærekraftig came to mind. It's a word of our time, but still, we can use it to understand better how to embed lean in our daily work, to make it become the way we do it, not only in the environmental perspective of the word. Bærekraftig, it translates to sustainable, but in Norwegian, it might hold something more. Bære means to carry. Kraftig means forceful, powerful. The etymology points both to endurance, but also flexibility, features much needed to succeed with lean. Our goal, now aided by the term bærekraftig, is to turn lean into something we can all own together. To do that, we need to endure, standing on the high peaks, but also lingering in the deep valleys. We need capability to handle high rates of change, as well as the patience through calmer periods. So here ends my story today, but not our lean journey. It goes on in altered shapes, sounds, and smells, but it is still lean. It is still continuous improvement because it aims to be bærekraftig.
Thank you, Svein Ore. I love your Norwegian flag and spirit. Our fourth presenter is Business Process Improvement Specialist, Canberra University. She is joining us from Canberra in Australia, where it is already Wednesday, and it is currently about 4:30 a.m. I'm sure you have lots of coffee. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome, Grace Bryant.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm just going to make sure I've got my view right. Hope everyone can see me. I'm a little bit nervous. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how listening and learning and responding to clients is a type of respect for people and how it can be edifying for your own practice. Before I begin proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners on the land of which I am presenting, the Ngunnawal peoples. I pay my respects to any First Peoples here today and the leaders of our First People, past, present, and future. It's very early in the morning here for me, so here's a coffee to get us all going. G'day, and thank you for having me. I'm very flattered and delighted to have been invited. Some of you may know Canberra is Australia's capital city, located 3 hours south of Sydney. We have a population of just over 400,000 and we're surrounded by bushland. So we're known as the bush capital. This photo where you can see the scrub is just taken in my house. Here's a shot of the University of Canberra, or confusingly, the other UC. It's a small university with heart. We have a student base of 15,000, complemented by 1,500 full-time staff, and no kidding, a mob of kangaroos. We recently ranked #1 in the world for SDGs and reducing inequalities. UC, like other universities, is data and feedback rich from both staff and students in the community. We're constantly pulsing our community on how we're performing. In my 17-year experience, while universities are very quick to promote the things we do well, we're slower to fix the things that we don't do well, or that we see I guess, negative feedback. So my question to you all is, does seeking feedback leave us with an obligation to respond with actions? And through a lean lens, how can we show respect for people by both listening and integrating feedback into our decision making? For us, we started a little bit smaller by asking how we were making decisions about which improvements we undertake. Were we listening broadly, deeply, and inclusive across our community? Or were we listening and responding to the loudest or most powerful voice? How could we tell that we were doing right by one or many? We realized that we didn't have a mechanism that provided us with a common platform for an authentic and open-ended conversation between students, staff, and the community, where all voices were valued equally, and where we could find a collective voice to inform decision-making on process improvement. By better plugging into quiet, silent, or dissenting voices, connecting voices together, could we become better? Could an authentic conversation that invites and accepts all voices become our most powerful tool? We set out to try. We call this project Process Hack. Process Hack, what is it? Is it a woman holding an axe? God, I hope not. Process Hack set out to establish an accessible and equal inclusive community conversation to establish UC's most painful processes collectively, followed by clear priorities and actions to address each pain point. We started with what we already knew was painful to staff and students by reviewing the data from over 50 feedback instruments, surveys, reports, audits, whatever we could get our hands on. We connected this data to understand existing trends and to guide the process hack conversation. The results won't surprise you. In reviewing those 50 instruments, we established what staff and students found most painful. Their most painful process, have a guess, it was parking. Pretty universal. After we'd set out how we were going to guide the conversation, we established an inclusive program to host the conversation with zero budget. One benefit of being small is that we're really agile. The other disadvantage is that we have no money. So we used Padlet, a free online tool that we could guide anonymous, two-way conversation, face-to-face and online survey, and post-it notes with prompts. Our main question was, what are UC's most painful processes and why? We knew the trickiest bit would be earning people's trust and sharing their voices. So we bribed them. Rather than expecting them to come to us, we went to them. We hijacked coffee shops with coffee vouchers for anyone who talked to us, stood out the front of popular lecture theatres, and even hijacked meetings. A lesson: people will do anything for a coffee. Over 10 days, we achieved exceptional engagement results. We received over 61,000 words in feedback, and just for reference, a novel is about 80,000 words. We synthesised these very, very deeply and derived 10 critical processes to improve. These included timetabling, student placements, travel and wayfinding, and of course, parking. We then communicated the results broadly and sensitively, approached and engaged with process owners to work through the data before rushing to solutions. The majority of process owners received the feedback quite well and were keen to make improvements. They could hear the collective voice. Opening up this conversation, encouraging dissent, and establishing a corrective voice to guide our decision resulted in a 2-year program of improvement. Yay! We kicked off the work. Where possible, we formed small, fast teams with staff members that were local subject matter experts. We provided light guidance. We were a team of 2 at the time, and the flying teams made small, regular and meaningful improvements to processes such as student placements and, believe it or not, parking. We made sure that we had a super strong focus on benefits to users. At the same time, we established larger, slower teams to work through bigger improvements, and these often became projects with funding. Nearly 3 years on, we're delivering our biggest process improvement, a paperless travel process. A surprising outcome of the broader cultural shift this encouraged over time is that improvement suddenly became the new core. I think my final reflections on collective voice and process hack are that it's always worth asking, listening to, and trying to establish a harmonised and representative citizen voice to ensure that your decision-making at any level is relevant. There may be limits on how far this extends, but collective voice is always a useful balance and check. This story isn't perfect. There are some successes and a lot of lessons, and I'll tell you sometime about these over a beer. And there are a few perfect things in this world, with the exception of this creature that you see on your screen, Lulu Darling. She'll be needing a cuddle soon, so I'll leave this presentation here for now and eagerly await that invitation for a beer. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story, Grace. And I like process hacks. That has the potential to go viral. And very soon, Grace gets to go back to sleep because it is very early for her. And I want to thank all of you for coming to speak to us from all over the world to show us how Lean is working in higher education. And this is just a fun competition, but we are placing a poll up here to see who wins the Pecha competition. So go ahead and open that poll. And while the votes are being tabulated, I just wanted to see if we could ask a couple of questions of our panelists. So let's have all the Pecha Kucha speakers turn on their videos. Nice job. Nice work. Woohoo. All right, Savenar, I think one of your colleagues who knows you has heard you say that lean and process improvement is ingrained in the culture in Norway. Is that true?
Well, kind of. So the Nordic model is a model where involvement, where respect for people is really embedded in the culture. Also in job connections, we are low on hierarchy. There is a very short line to your manager or even the top manager. So I would say it's kind of ingrained in the culture, yes.
Very nice. Thank you so much. And Grace, I love what you said about the importance of listening to all the voices. Did you try anything new this past year to listen to the voices?
Yeah, we've got some fantastic stuff in the works. We're running a student-led project where students are given a pot of money out of their students' amenities and fee money, and they need to manage that money themselves and democratically decide how it will be spent, bringing in not just the student leaders, but often those voices that aren't heard as much. So getting down below the initial level of student leadership, that's probably the loudest voice.
Thank you. And Angus, have you used a lot of process improvement in the past year at the college in London?
Tracy, absolutely yes. I think particularly provoked by the pandemic, process has suddenly become incredibly important, either to record what we do because it becomes hidden once we're all working remotely, but also to capture all the great things we've done in crisis, to embed them and make sure they keep going. So there's been a lot of process mapping, which has been brilliant.
Very exciting. I'm getting very excited about lean in higher education. And Megan, you've worked with higher education institutions across the US. So what would you say is the biggest hurdle to getting started with process improvement?
Well, the lens that I look at everything through is through a change lens, and process improvement is really people change in disguise. And so I would say that the number one factor to support any change is strong executive sponsorship. So the stronger that your executive sponsorship can be, the stronger you're going to start off your process improvement journey.
Yes, I absolutely agree 100%. Okay, it's now time to announce the Pecha Kucha winner. And the winner is Megan Mosina with 35%. Woohoo! Very nice, Megan. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the presenters for participating in our first virtual Pecha Kucha. Thank you so much, everyone, all over the world. Okay, it's really nice to see how lean is working for others all over the place, especially in healthcare. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and talk about the next thing, which is our raffle. We want you, our audience, to experience continuous improvement too, which is why we are giving away a Lean Six Sigma or project management course right now with a raffle. We'll have one lucky winner of a $500 voucher towards a project management or Lean Six Sigma professional development course, courtesy of UC San Diego Extension. Now, for the instructions for the raffle, we did change it up a bit. So from past raffles. So please listen carefully. I will give you a question to answer. The chat function will open for answers to be typed in, and you have 2 minutes to type your answer into the chat window. When the time is up, the chat window will close, and a winner of the prize will be randomly chosen from all those who correctly answered the question. And so now, get ready. Here is the question. The question is, Bill Balzer mentioned the 4 C's. What does each of the C's stand for? So now's your time to type in what each C stands for in any order. It's going to be open for 2 minutes. And while we're waiting, why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about continuous improvement a little bit more. We're going to thank our sponsor, and well, we'll go ahead and thank our sponsor, and then we'll find out who the winner of the raffle is. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Quali Build, a no-code platform empowering UC San Diego to reduce process waste and free up staff time to concentrate on value-add activities. Put the power of process improvement in your hands with digital forms, approval routing, and customizable email notifications, all without writing a single line of code. More by visiting the link in the chat that Megan is going to put in. Okay, we will also go ahead and encourage you to complete the post-end survey that will be sent shortly to help us continue to improve our events. And I'd like to invite you to join us next Tuesday, June 1st, where we will be discussing continuous improvement in healthcare. We'll be hearing from one of the Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, Dr. Laura Esserman, as well as the life sharing story and viewing the final presentation results from our competition, the Great Lean Six Sigma Race. So go ahead and click in the chat for more information on that too. Okay, let's see if we actually have a winner. Let's find out who the winner of the $500 voucher towards a project management or Lean Six Sigma professional development course will be. And this is also thank you to UC San Diego Extension. All right, are we ready? Whoa, let's see here. I got to go through the chat. Okay, the correct answer is commoditization, cost sensitivity, competition, and COVID. And the winner is, I apologize in advance if I don't say your name correctly, Armin Abrahamian. You are the winner. Congratulations. We'll be contacting you soon via the information you provided during the registration with further instructions on redeeming your prize. Woo woo, that's Armin Abrahamian. I'm sorry if I butchered that. All right, we are about the end of our time today. I want to thank our presenters and guests for coming to Process Palooza today, for sharing their time and knowledge. And I want to thank you, the audience, for spending time with us. Thank you all, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.